Thousands take over the streets protesting in defense of the people of Iran. The march, organized by community leaders and human rights activists, is one of many across the globe following the death of Mahsa Amini. Plus, former Canadian Senator Don Meredith has been charged by Ottawa police with sexual assault and criminal harassment. We'll have the latest on the investigation. And
as a teacher, you are powerful, you are influential.
The Elementary Teachers Federation of Ontario holds its first symposium to address the urgency of recruiting Black teachers.
This is CBC Saturday News.
Thousands gathered at a demonstration in Richmond Hill today, denouncing Iran over the death of a young woman and against the compulsory hijab law. Greg Ross was there.
Thousands of protesters gathered just north of Toronto, waving flags and holding signs like this one that says, "Free Iran."
It's the fight for justice.
Mirdat Hadi is one of the organizers of this protest. She says people here are frustrated and angry after the death of Mahsa Amini, who died in police custody in Iran after being arrested for allegedly violating the country's compulsory hijab law.
Mahsa is the symbol, but now it's about everybody. This is for Iran and people of Iran.
Protests very similar to this one were held in many other cities across the globe. Thousands more gathered across Canada in cities like Winnipeg and Montreal.
I would feel useless if I weren't here today supporting them and echoing their voice, because they have voice.
There were other massive turnouts in London, Paris, and Madrid, where this woman cut off her hair in protest. She says, "Long live Iran." Some say the movement is already having an impact in Iran.
This is quite powerful, and no matter what happens in the upcoming weeks, things are not going back to normal.
Here in Richmond Hill, organizers hope their voices are heard and their support is felt by the people of Iran. They're demanding an end to the Islamic Republic regime. And while they don't expect the Iranian government to listen, they say they do hope to get the attention of other world leaders.
The government of Iran won't listen to these people. The government of other countries should listen to these people. They have to put pressure on the government of Iran.
She says the time for change is now, and that the people here will continue to stand in solidarity with the people of Iran for as long as it takes. Greg Ross, CBC News, Richmond Hill.
CBC News has confirmed that Ottawa police have charged former Conservative Senator Don Meredith with sexual assault. Aithel Musa has the latest.
Police say former Senator Don Meredith was charged today in Ottawa after an investigation into allegations of sexual assault made by a woman. The alleged incidents date back to 2013 and 2014, and police say the alleged victim was an adult when they took place. Bara Khan is a gender justice advocate. She says some victims feel safer coming forward today because we're now talking more openly about these issues.
It's not seen as something that you individually have to be ashamed of, but something that the weight of your institution, your workplace, the person who committed that harm has to carry. And so we're seeing more survivors feel safer to come forward. And that's really important.
Meredith, who was a Pentecostal minister, was appointed to the Senate by former Prime Minister Stephen Harper in 2010. He served in that role until his resignation in 2017. Meredith resigned from the Senate as his former colleagues were preparing to expel him over a Senate ethics report that detailed his inappropriate relationship with a teenaged girl. Another ethics report found Meredith also engaged in behavior that constituted harassment and sexual harassment in the workplace. In 2020, the Senate paid nearly $500,000 in compensation to 9 of Meredith's former employees. Meredith is still eligible to collect a parliamentary pension because he resigned before facing an expulsion vote. CBC has reached out to Meredith for comment but did not receive a response. Aithel Musa, CBC News, Toronto.
In Mississauga, one person is in custody after a day-long standoff with police. Roads were closed and residents were told to avoid the area. The standoff began around 7:30 yesterday morning after a person barricaded themselves in a building next to Credit Valley Hospital. Crisis negotiators worked to get the person out of the building throughout the day. Today, around 2 a.m., Peel Police said the incident was resolved with no injuries. Police did not provide any more information on a motive or exactly what happened in the building. As of today, travelers to Canada do not need to show proof of vaccination against COVID-19 using the ArriveCan app. The measure is being dropped along with other pandemic restrictions like masking on planes and trains. But the government hopes people will continue to use the app to fill out customs information. The new version of the app does not ask about vaccination status or health, just basic customs questions. For now, the voluntary app is only offered at Vancouver, Toronto, and Montreal airports. Toronto cyclists gathered today to raise awareness about the need for safer streets. With the municipal election on the horizon, they say they want to see more action taken to protect its vulnerable road users. Tyler Cheese has more.
These cyclists in Trinity Bellwoods Park aren't just here for a pleasure ride. They want to see the city take more action to keep the streets safe.
You're seeing the complete missed opportunity to make sure that cyclists, pedestrians, people that are not literally in cars are protected here in the city of Toronto. We'd like our streets back.
More specifically, they want the city's active TO program back.
We don't want that to end. We don't want that access to those streets to be taken away.
Road safety advocates say the city broke its promise to bring back the program in the future.
It was an extraordinarily successful program that tens of thousands of people used every time it was put on. It increased diversity in the take-up of active transportation, which is incredibly important in a city as diverse as Toronto.
The city first introduced active TO in May 2022 in response to the pandemic. It allowed for pedestrians and cyclists to use Lakeshore Boulevard to get outside and be more active during periods of lockdown. Now in June 2022, the city said it would continue the program on occasion as a special event. But no events have occurred since then. The cyclists rode along Lakeshore Boulevard to recreate the program, ending just outside Lamport Stadium. Organizers say the loss of active TO is just one way the city has let down its vulnerable road users.
High Park was a powder keg this summer of conflict between many parties. There was legitimate conflict between cyclists and pedestrians that we need to address with infrastructure. But there was the typical City of Toronto response endorsed by Mayor Tory of send the police in to deal with it. And that just made matters worse.
What do we want? Safe streets!
Looking toward the municipal election, the group says it hopes politicians are listening.
I hope that they finally put the political will that they've got into making sure that our streets are open for everyone and not just for vehicles.
The city told CBC News it's reviewing the active TO program and will provide an update in coming weeks. Tyler Cheese, CBC News, Toronto.
Ontario's minimum wage increased by 50 cents today to an hourly rate of $15.50. The Ontario Living Wage Network reports on the cost of living in Ontario and compares it to what workers need to earn. Last November, it set the living wage in Toronto at about $22 an hour.
That means that someone working full-time on minimum wage would be short by $230 a week from being able to make ends meet. What are people to do if they work full-time and they have to make these terrible decisions between rent and food?
He adds the amount doesn't take into account this year's soaring inflation. In a statement, the Ministry of Labour said this government boosted minimum wage, recognizing the cost of living, and that they plan to increase it annually. A ceremony was held at Queen's Park today to mark the first Cadet Week in Ontario. The event recognizes Sea, Army, and Air cadets from across the province.
The young people that you see here today, particularly the older ones, are taking on a key role leading some of the younger cadets that are joining the program. And it equips them with skills that enable them for the rest of their lives. We're really trying to help them make a successful transition to adulthood, and we're quite good at it.
It just means kind of coming together within our community, being able to practice a whole bunch of leadership and have really great citizenship opportunities and being really involved with people who might not normally be involved within their community.
More than 130 cadets were there to celebrate. Earlier this year, the province passed legislation to officially establish Ontario Cadets Week. It's recognized during the first week of October throughout the province. Sophia Kambalia from the Weather Network joins us now for a first look at the forecast. And today actually felt like a little throwback to summer.
Yeah, we had some peaks of sunshine, actually. We weren't supposed to get it. It was supposed to be all cloud all day, but lovely sunshine to enjoy the first day of October. Hello, folks. So we did squeak out a little bit of that sunshine, but I want to talk about some of those clouds that we had. The cloud deck that you were experiencing out there today is actually the northern edge of the remnants of that powerful storm Ian that's been barreling up the U.S. eastern seaboard. But we will have a really gusty northeast wind that will clear the chalkboard for Sunday into Monday. Clear and cool will be the name of the game. Our temperatures are going down to the wayside. If you are heading out to Dewey Blanche throughout the overnight, which you'll hear a little bit more about throughout the rest of the show, will feel like the mid-teens when you begin, and will feel like 5 throughout the overnight period, so you're definitely going to want to jacket. And what about Sunday? We're actually laying on the wind chill on the temperatures for the first time in many, many months, as with the wind it will feel a little bit cooler, but still that pleasant sunshine if you're headed out to see the fall colors or maybe out to see the jays. And coming up, Talia, we'll talk about how cold it gets Sunday overnight. We'll actually be talking about frost again in cottage country, maybe the end of the growing and gardening season as well.
Oh no, thanks for that, Sophia.
You're welcome.
The remnants of Hurricane Ian are weakening as the storm moves further inland, but it's left behind a staggering amount of destruction across the southern United States. Jamie Strachan has the details.
Hurricane Ian has been downgraded to a post-tropical cyclone, but the devastation left behind by one of the strongest and costliest storms in U.S. history is jarring.
We shouldn't be alive right now with that storm. The power of that storm. I mean, if that would have crashed into the side of the house, we would have been swept away.
Ian battered Florida's Gulf Coast earlier this week, leaving dozens dead, hundreds of thousands without power, and billions of dollars of damage. It then touched down yesterday in South Carolina, about 100 kilometers north of historic Charleston. The powerful storm washed away 4 massive piers connected to the tourist area near Myrtle Beach.
We know that we have much cleaning up and rebuilding to do. Most of us have seen the pictures, particularly on the Grand Strand. We had a lot of water.
The most jarring damage is in Florida, where historic storm surges left communities flattened. Before and after pictures show the scope of the devastation.
We know that we're going to have a long road to recovery ahead of us.
Even as officials assess the damage, some areas remain under threat, with many rivers yet to crest, and in Sarasota, a large dike has been compromised, impacting an important highway.
Nobody can access the highway going south, which is a key area because south is where Northport is and Fort Myers and the areas that actually got hit worse by the hurricane. So it's impacting us in terms of getting them aid.
A life-changing storm whose impact will be felt for years. Jamie Strachan, CBC News, Toronto.
The Elementary Teachers Federation of Ontario held its first symposium to address the urgency of recruiting Black teachers. Today, principals and teachers gathered to find ways to improve representation in the province's education system. Meg Roberts has more.
I was working in a kindergarten class. One student said, "You look like my dad."
Speaking practically, I'm the only one. From the last couple of schools that I've been at, I've been the only Black teacher in the schools for like the past 2 or 3 years. Kind of creates a sense of othering, or that we're not really a part of the system in a certain way, or we can't see ourselves in these higher profile positions or positions of leadership or things like that.
Our students are not seeing themselves in the teachers or the educators that are working in the front of the classrooms across the province, and we're bringing together a lot of people to have a discussion about how we can improve that. When we don't have Black educators and teachers in front of those classrooms, there's a massive gap there. There's a massive gap for our Black kids who we know perform better when they have a Black teacher at some point in their career, but it's also for all of our students. They need that diversity, they need that broad perspective on what makes Ontario and what makes Canada and this world amazing.
As a teacher, you are powerful, you are influential.
I think it's extremely vital. It's vital for new teachers as well as teachers like me who have been teaching for about 15 years to have that community, to have these discussions getting these students before they even enter the university system. Because if they can't see themselves as teachers when they're in elementary school and middle school and high school, and if they can't see themselves as someone who can go to university, then how are we going to have them be educators? Everyone has a lived experience. And when we come with an open mind and we are open to the kids and teaching them about diversity and equity and the issues that they're facing and the issues that we're facing in Toronto as a whole, I think it's absolutely critical and vital.
A lot has changed within the past 2 years, and hopefully a lot more will change within the next 2 to 5 years, which is really encouraging considering how long these conversations have been having for.
You guys are incredible, all right, and enjoy the out of this tonight.
The Blue Jays are going to the playoffs, locking up a spot after Baltimore lost to Boston. And while they weren't scheduled to play, that didn't stop them from celebrating. The Jays have 5 more games left in the season, and they're fighting for the home field advantage. Today, hundreds of road hockey players at all levels took to the streets raising money for cancer research.
To use a sport we love to make a big impact, it's overwhelming, that shared experience. And it's to come together on a day like that. It's emotional. It's a lot of fun.
It was the 11th annual Road Hockey to Conquer Cancer tournament. Organizers say over 135 teams took part and 30 celebrity hockey stars participated in today's event. The tournament took place in Vaughan. Hundreds of people stepped up to the challenge of pulling a 25,000-pound truck today to raise money for ALS research. The group also had a special guest.
I currently hold 33 Guinness World Records in strength, mainly for pulling things like planes, trains, and automobiles. And hey, pulling a truck is the most awesome thing because it's like a metaphor. We have all these big obstacles in life like ALS, and together we can overcome.
The world record holder says ALS had also impacted a close friend. Organizers say the disease is terminal and funds go towards research and helping to support those living with it. This year, they've raised $150,000. As the sun sets tonight, the biggest Dewey Blanche yet will officially be kicking off, with installations all across the GTA, from Etobicoke to Scarborough and from downtown to North York. I spoke with the artistic director who shared some of the highlights.
I'm excited for each section. So we're in Scarborough. Vaishevni is the work behind us right now, and her work's really incredible. She's an emerging artist based in Scarborough. She does really incredible thread-based sculpture, which you can see, and she's really interested in this relationship to her diasporic community and how that and what that means for her to come here as a newcomer, and what that relationship as she develops as an artist. Downtown we have what's called Light Teepee. That's Cheryl Arundel. That will be one of the signature works at Nathan Phillips Square, and it's going to light the sky up and mark that as an Indigenous space. We have an Indigenous skateboard fish weir plaza at Yonge and Dundas Square. We have full screen domination at Yonge and Dundas Square as well, and we've closed Yonge Street all the way from the square to Queens Quay, where you'll end up and see this stunning water screen projection of Manamoana on Lake Ontario. There's some really great work in Etobicoke. It's got a real material culture feel to it. Soft Walls Collective is doing a human glow-in-the-dark weaving with your bodies. So there'll be a huge installation where people will be weaving all night. There's a beautiful installation of cyanotypes of the ocean from an Australian matriarch. It's a mother and 2 daughters that have made that work, and it's really stunning. Another really beautiful work called Blue Girl, which is by Raw, and she's looking at complex issues around women and self-emulation. We also have a really great work by Brooke Andrews, who's really interested in this kind of way that land breathes and moves and is mapped out. So lots of really great work up there.
We also spoke with one artist whose work will be in 4 different locations, including Scarborough.
I've been working on this exhibit to showcase this year at Dewey Blanche. It's called Those Who Watch Over Us. So it's kind of my response to experiences I've had growing up, feeling sort of like unwanted and unwelcome when I'm in public spaces. I think it's something that a lot of Black people can identify with. It's just like the idea of hyper-surveillance and feeling like you're being watched or you're being monitored when you move through public spaces. And there's a lot of signage that goes with that, like, you know, like just video surveillance signage or no loitering signs or private property signs. So Basically, my approach to dealing with that was to sort of subvert that signage and kind of flip it into positive messaging that's directed at my community. Just messages like messages to sort of let you know that space is being held for you, that you're welcome in a space, that you're wanted in a space, and also reminders that we are being surveilled by our ancestors as well, and forces that wish us well.
Wow, what a great space for expression.
I know, and you're back now with our extended forecast, and you had some really important advice earlier for people to dress warm tonight.
Yeah, layer up, folks. It will be clear, though, which is lovely, so no rain in the forecast for the overnight if you are headed out to see any of the installations, but we'll feel throughout the overnight like 5. So it'll be rather chilly into the overnight. Chilly, cool, clear, but really pleasant. For Sunday, if you're headed out to the pumpkin patch, the apple orchard, maybe to the Jays game or to see the fall colors, that'll be the story for the next coming days. But I mentioned we have a Sunday overnight cool down that we have to talk about. So temperatures overnight Sunday will be into the low single digits into the south, but look at cottage country. You are dipping a few degrees below the freezing mark. That means frost. That means cover up the tomato plants if they're still out in the garden, if you haven't put all of that away for the season. Temperatures hover a couple of degrees below the seasonal average for Monday as well. But we do warm up quite nicely a little bit later on. The first couple days that we have to get rid of this really strong overarching high pressure. So we'll make for those beautiful bluebird skies as high pressure takes hold, but it's also a northeast wind, and that's why you will feel that little bit of chill in the air. We have won the lottery when it comes to sunshine, though, so plenty of sunshine in daylight hours over the next coming days. And I take your attention to Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, where we dip back into the 20s. So we'll be really pleasant if you can take the day off. Those are the days to do it. But watch this really big U-turn between Wednesday into Friday. Your overnight lows become your daytime highs to begin next weekend. So we'll feel rather fall-like with lows into the low single digits into next weekend, Talia.
Thanks, Sophia.
You're welcome.
That's our show for you tonight. Thanks so much for watching. You can stay caught up on news anytime on our website, cbcnews.ca. Good night.